Hi, welcome back to Meerkat Okay. This is Marisol. Today I wanted to talk about DeBÍ TiRAR MÁS FOToS by Bad Bunny. I wanted to talk about this album because it's been on repeat on my Spotify, and honestly, this whole album made me think about the connections between music and activism. And yeah, so I just wanted to take a deep dive on Puerto Rican history and see how that connects with the album DeBÍ TiRAR MÁS FOToS by Bad Bunny. I just want to give a disclaimer. I'm not Puerto Rican. I'm Mexican. I have a Puerto Rican friend that's proud and shared a lot of her stories and frustrations about how Puerto Rico is a colony and about the lack of Latino diversity in California, because primarily like a lot of Latino stuff is like revolves around being Mexican and stuff. So I will say that in doing research for this project, it was very eye-opening, but like of course, I'm going through basic Puerto Rican history. If you want to learn more about Puerto Rican history from Puerto Rican creators, please check out Jorel Melendez Vadillo, DeBÍ Pires from the Borican podcast, Elizabeth Velasquez from Elizabeth Velasquez Poetry, and independent journalist Bianca Graulao, because my explanation of Puerto Rican history is about to be basic research to put Bad Bunny's music into context. But yeah, go check out these Puerto Rican creators and learn about Puerto Rican history from Puerto Rican people. So, from my opinion, good music has always ruffled some feathers, and it's because music is able to ruffle feathers that is able to like help us connect really deeply to the music and feel something, especially in these unprecedented times that are happening. History is always repeating itself. That's what I believe. From Bob Dylan's Times Are Changing, talking about the civil rights movement, from Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, commenting about the Vietnam War, Imagine by John Lennon, being sung by actors during the COVID pandemic, to nowadays in pop music, we have All Right by Kendrick Lamar, Formation by Beyonce. I wanted to talk about Bad Bunny's new album, DeBÍ TiRAR MÁS FOToS, and other contemporary pop songs that have inspired Latino people to take power back through music and dance. And in this video specifically, I want to talk about Bad Bunny's DeBÍ TiRAR MÁS FOToS, because this album is rich in cultural work delivered as a like poetic love letter to Puerto Rico and the Puerto Rican people. And before we dive too deep into the album, I want to give a quick crash course in Puerto Rican history to put the album and Puerto Rican history into perspective, into context, and also like be able to point out like what sorts of references that Bad Bunny makes throughout his musical career that points to Puerto Rican history. So Puerto Rican history in a nutshell. So it all started with Columbus. Psych. Puerto Rico's indigenous people are the Taínos. They didn't originally refer to themselves as Taínos because apparently like Taínos was something indigenous people would say in order to say that they are men of good. At some point of history, Taínos or the island Arawaks, which is like what I kept saying while I was like researching, were an indigenous group made up of the Antilles. But even with this, I'm gonna take this with a grain of salt because like it seems like it's widely debated, and also from like we have now, this is just like information from like Spanish accounts and like white ethnographers, and like it is dicey, like, you know, like I don't know, but that's just the information that I was able to come across like from the internet. So anyways, Columbus came with his cooties and bloodthirsty violence, and he massacred and exploited the Taino population in 1493. And over time, the large population of Tainos became like a mix of Taino, Black, Black and Spanish descent in order to make up the Puerto Rican population. And this is kind of like similar to what happened to a lot of like Latin American countries, because the Spanish brought in like Black people as slaves and just massacred a bunch of indigenous populations. The Spanish then colonized Puerto Rico and literally named the island Rich Port because there were so many good places to drop shipments and to dock their ships. So when they first landed there, they enslaved Tainos to mine for gold, and as Tainos were being exposed to different Spanish diseases, the Taino population declined from this exposure, and then that's when the Spaniards brought in Black people as slaves to work. Hence why a lot of like Puerto Ricans have mixed descent. Black, Spanish, and Taino culture all tied up. And since the land was rich, many countries fought for the land over time, but Spain remained in control for a really, really long time. It wasn't until 1815 that there was a large migration of Europeans that moved to Puerto Rico to escape harsh conditions in Europe. Because at this point, there was a lot of famine and just like economic hardships happening in Europe. So people were like, let's go to the Caribbean. Okay, at the time in 1821, there was this Puerto Rican president that had sent a letter to his mom saying that he was thinking of bringing up the issue of abolishing slavery to the Spanish courts. He sent the letter, but there's no evidence that he actually brought up the topic in Spanish courts. However, when he sent the letter, that letter was then intercepted, and enslaved people thought they were free. So, rightfully so, they were like, we're leaving. we're free. There was like a clash between enslaved people and the military because of this. But even before that even after this had happened, Marcos Ciorro came into the picture in July 1821, and he was like, well, fuck the government, fuck these people that think they own us, let's revolt, burn the city, and kill everybody. He had nothing, and at the time, he had nothing to lose. And like the white Spanish people were the ones enacting the flagrant violence against enslaved people. Marcos Ciorro had begun working with other enslaved people in multiple plantations around Puerto Rico. So they were locked in to make this plan happen, burn plantations and get out. This plan was great. It was great. But Marcos Ciorro, with this great plan that he was bound to have ops with elaborate plans as such. And here comes Ambrosio, a loyal enslaved person who exposed Marcos to plantation owners. Why did Ambrosio do this? I don't know. Why did Judas turn in Jesus? People be playing stupid games sometimes. Ambrosio was promised freedom and 500 pesos for exposing conspiracies. So in the end, Ambrosio told on Marcos, and in the end, Marcos and his allies were tried and executed. And why did I include this story? I felt like it was important because a lot of people believe that Marcos Ciorro was also getting support from Haiti, who had just become independent. And also Marcos Ciorro is definitely a precursor to all the revolutionary movements that happened right after for Puerto Ricans to fight for their independence from Spain. So I think his story goes on to show just how much Puerto Ricans have had to fight for their rights and freedom. Even though Marcos Ciorro was not Puerto Rican, he was of African descent, but he was in Puerto Rico, and he did inspire a lot of Puerto Rican people to fight for their rights, fight for the freedom, back in the 1850s to nowadays. So next we have 1868, El Grito de Lares. In 1868, Puerto Ricans were fed up already. There was hurricanes, droughts, on top of like the Spanish government putting tariffs and taxes. And why does it sound so familiar right now? Many Puerto Ricans, led by Manuel Rojas, revolted against Spanish rule and sought Puerto Rican independence. They planned this uprising, but this uprising was quickly squashed by the military just because the Spanish like had everything on lock. And even though it was squashed by the military very quickly, it definitely had a large impact, because after the uprising, we had the Moret Law, which like was the start of like abolishing slavery in the island. And then finally in 1873, they finally abolished slavery for sure. 1897, we have the Intentona de Yauco. Puerto Ricans tried revolting again, and this time they waved. This was the first time the Puerto Rican flag was flown for the first time, and again this uprising was also quickly squashed by the military government, but it also was an event that had significant impact. Right after the Intentona de Yauco, we have 1897, when Puerto Ricans finally made the Carta Autonómica, which was basically an autonomous charter, and it revolutionized the Puerto Rican government for the very first time. The charter proposed that although Puerto Rican government would still be appointed by Spain, Puerto Ricans could vote for local representatives and they would themselves control their budget and taxes. So Puerto Ricans rejoiced in this new autonomy, but only for like 5 minutes.
Do you know you have 30 minutes?
Are you kidding me?
30, yes.
Because the US government was already scheming something. So, a few years before 1897, the US was already scheming for ways to become a global power and assert their imperialistic values. So, according to the Naval War Board, they were convinced that the only way to achieve power was by taking over the islands on the Caribbean and the Pacific to build bases, get more resources, and have strategic defending posts. And unfortunately, in the spring of 1898, the US invaded Puerto Rico, Cuba, and went to war with Spain. So this is where we have the Spanish-American War. By August of 1898, Spanish retreated, and they ended up selling Guam, Philippines, Puerto Rico over to the US. Puerto Rico was put immediately under US military rule. So now that we have the military rule, we have the Foraker Act of 1900, and this act established free trade between the US and Puerto Rico, and they set a civil government for Puerto Rico. This allowed Puerto Ricans to send a voter representative to Congress that had no voting power. So they would just sit there, I guess. But the US president would appoint the governor of Puerto Rico. And this 1900s act changed the agriculture of Puerto Rico forever, because Puerto Rico used to grow a diverse amount of crops. They didn't need the help of any other country. They were self-sufficient in their agriculture. Like, land was very fertile. But like, because of US pressure and like factories coming to Puerto Rico, the land changed from like multiple different like agriculture, diverse agriculture, to just monoculture. So a lot of factories just came in and they were like, we're just gonna have sugar plantations and sugar farms here. So Puerto Rico became a monoculture, meaning that farmers were incentivized to only grow sugar due to US high demand and highly capitalistic culture. And I wanted to go back to Bianca Graulao. She has an amazing video explaining this and how this drastically changed the Puerto Rican diet and health. And I strongly recommend checking her out, checking her journalism and her channel out, because she's also on YouTube. And I really learned a lot from like her video. Next, we have the Jones Act of 1917. This gave Puerto Ricans citizenship but not statehood. And this is controversial because Puerto Ricans still can't vote for a president or representatives if they live in the island. But if you move to any US state, then you can vote, which is... Then we have the Ley de Mordaza in 1948. So from 1948 and 1952, it was a felony to display the Puerto Rican flag in public. You were only allowed to fly the US flag because technically Puerto Rico was a US colony and still is. And people were not even allowed to sing patriotic songs about Puerto Rico. Shortly after, Puerto Ricans were given the right to elect their own governor, and this is when they first elected Muñoz Marin. Marin drafted a new Puerto Rican constitution, but it was rejected by President Truman because Puerto Rico declared themselves a free associated state of Puerto Rico, which felt unacceptable because in the eyes of the US government, they were not an independent state. They were a Commonwealth state, which is whatever. Okay, 1955, we also had some like pharmaceutical companies set up shop in Puerto Rico and subjected low-income unknowing women to birth control human trials. And Bailey Sarian has an episode about this on her Dark History podcast. I was very horrified. I'm not going to go too much into this because this isn't really talked about in Bad Bunny's music, but like there's just been a lot of things that have happened in Puerto Rico where it's just like, that's not why. Like, why are you guys taking advantage of this? Why is the US taking advantage of this? So currently, Puerto Rico has been affected by many hurricanes and natural disasters, and with little support from the US government. Puerto Rico is still recovering from Hurricane Maria, which destroyed their power grid and left it very fragile. And there are constant debates about whether Puerto Rico should be a US state or become independent. I don't really talk about that. But this is just like the quick crash course of Puerto Rican history that is going to be kind of like referenced in order to talk about Bad Bunny's discography. Yay! Okay. Bad Bunny, or Benito Antonio Martinez Ocasio, was born in Vega Baja, a neighborhood in Bayamon, Puerto Rico. He is the eldest of two siblings, like me, twin! He used to sing in Catholic church growing up and has always mentioned in interviews that he always stayed at home. He was not like for the streets. He pretty much just stayed with family. Bad Bunny got his rise to fame in popularizing Latin trap with his hit Diles with Dia Luyan. This was a song that got him signed to Hear This Music and kind of opened him the door to do a lot of collaborations like Karol G, Cardi B, J Balvin, and Drake. Por Siempre was the album that kind of catapulted into fame as a Latin artist. Yo hago lo que me dé la gana cemented his stardom because like you have a lot of hits like from that album. Y Un Verano Sin Ti catapulted him globally amongst American English speaking audiences and Latinos too. And in DeBÍ TiRAR MáS FOToS, I feel like this is the album that he kind of takes a stand, and it's like the whole album explicitly feels like a love letter to Puerto Rico. He's always been involved in like controversy, because like I know in 2020 he had the music video for Yo Perreo Sola, which he dresses up as a woman and he's like dancing in the club, and there was a lot of controversy around this music video because he's dressed as a woman, and I feel like in the Latino community there's a lot of machismo. So in this music video specifically, he was trying to go against the machismo and also trying to like comment on like the sexual harassment that happens against women, how like men try to grab you when you're trying to dance, but it's just like, I'm just trying to dance for myself, like not dancing for you. 2020, he also wore a shirt for one of his performances where he said, the shirt says they killed Alexa, not a man with a skirt. This is going explicitly against the transphobia that is in the Latino community, and a lot of people praised him for that. 2022, he also kissed a man during his award show performance, and people were like, whoa, like, oh my god. But he also, because of like stuff like that, he also has gotten flack because like people are like, are you queer baiting because like you're wearing feminine clothing and like you're kissing a man, like is this queer baiting? He's been involved in his fair share of controversies, and like I feel like he's used to it, and that's probably why like he doesn't mind taking a stand during his stand with his music, whether it's controversial or not. So now I want to talk about his music video, El Apagón, because honestly, like his whole thing of like taking a stand for Puerto Rico is like not anything new. He's been doing this a lot like throughout his musical career, especially with the song El Apagón. In this music video, he showcases multiple Puerto Rican people from his neighborhood, almost showcasing how diverse Puerto Ricans look. And this music video is then interrupted by an electrical explosion, by footage of an electrical explosion caused by Luma Energy. And this is a callback to Puerto Rican's fragile power grid. So Bianca Graulao actually collaborated with him during this music video, because she's in the music video talking about the effects of this explosion at a local hospital and how the island experiences rolling blackouts that have lasted longer and longer while electricity prices have soared, and Luma Energy hasn't really done anything to fix the issue. Bad Bunny then continues the music video after people are done talking about the rolling blackouts, and there's like a large amount of like youths dancing at a rave, accompanied with like everybody holding flashlights. So like that's how they create the environment of a rave, because there's no electricity. I feel like the music video kind of showed like just how resilient like the Puerto Rican people are, just because like they're trying to make do with like whatever the resources that they do have. And also another thing that was interesting about this music video is like you can clearly see that like he definitely supports the LGBTQ community, because like all throughout the rave you have pride flags and you have non-binary people dancing at the rave. And like I thought that was really interesting because like maybe before Bad Bunny there wasn't a lot of it was very rare for like music artists to be pro LGBTQ or like be very vocal about it. So it's very refreshing to see someone with such a big platform take a stand like that, especially like with the political climate of right now. Next we have the song Una Velita, and in this song he's like calling out the government. This song was, I think, right after Hurricane Maria, and there's like a lyric in the song where he says, con el gobierno no me envíen nada, que esos cabrones lo van a esconder, van pa la calle pa fotos nada más, por toditos se pueden joder, fueron 5,000 que dejaron morir y eso nunca se nos va a olvidar. So he's talking about his like, don't send me anything from the government, these people from the government are just hiding the resources. They go to the streets, they take photos, but they don't actually do anything. So he's calling out the government for being performative and like pretending that they're gonna give resources to the people, but it's just a photo op. So he's kind of like resenting government, and I think this is also like calling back to like when Trump was first president, where he showed up to Puerto Rico. He blocked US aid from coming like to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. And then there's like another line in the song that says, está empezando a llover, otra vez va a pasar, por ahí viene tormenta, quizás huracán. Está empezando a llover, otra vez pasará, por ahí viene la tormenta, ¿quién nos va a pasar? ¿Quién nos va a salvar? At the end, he says, prende una bolita para ver tu carita antes de acostarme. And then the song ends, estoy esperando a que salga el sol, que salga el sol. So I feel like right here, you have like the symbolism of the storm. The storm is coming in. Who's gonna save us? And he mentions like, we're gonna light a candle so I can see your little face before I go to sleep. And then there's like the symbolism of the sun. The symbolism of the sun. He describes that the sun is rising again. The sun is rising. And I feel like the sun is kind of like the hope that, like, you know, at the end of the day, like, nobody's gonna save Puerto Rico but like its own people, and that's the only hope that they have. So I want to go back to like the album. So this is like all precursor of the album DeBÍ TiRAR MÁS FOToS. But now we're going to go to the album DeBÍ TiRAR MÁS FOToS, and I'm going to talk about Lo que le pasó a Hawái, which is a song that kind of like perked up my ears, and I was like, oh, this is like music as activism. Turista and Mudanza. So first let's start with Lo que le pasó a Hawái. So in this song, the chorus says, quieren quitarme el río y también la playa, quieren el barrio mío y que tus hijos se vayan. No suelte la bandera ni olvide el lugar, que no quiero que hagan contigo lo que le pasó a Hawái. So the translation for this is like, they want to take my river away, they want to take my beaches, they want to take my neighborhood, and that my children leave. Don't leave the flag, don't forget Little Light. I've heard that that's like a song, like a Christmas song that's like specific to Puerto Rico. So like, don't forget like the native songs that we have. I don't want them to do what they did to Hawaii. And this is interesting too, because like this also relates to another video that Bianca Graulao recently posted about how hotel resorts are taking away Puerto Rican access to public beaches by making private beaches, and or just making the beaches in general inaccessible to residents. And I think she briefly touches upon this subject in the El Apagón music video with Bad Bunny, because there's a specific scene in El Apagón music video towards the end where she's talking to a resident, and she's like, technically the Puerto Rican people have access to the private beaches, but they make it so hard for the people to actually go to the beaches because they have to go through these rocks that they could like slip and like die to even get to the private beaches. So like, it's just like how a lot of these hotel resorts and like rich people are kind of making like taking over like the beaches and making it inaccessible to the people that were there first and actually grew up in the island. And in this song specifically, Bad Bunny is warning against the efforts to create Puerto Rico a U.S. state or open the doors for the U.S. tourism so freely, because he fears that Puerto Rican resources will be taken away from its people, and he fears that Puerto Ricans will suffer the same fate as Hawaii. So like I don't really know much about Hawaiian history, but like from what I do know is I know that when the US took over, the agriculture before in Hawaii was very diverse. And then the US came, and now Hawaiian agriculture is mostly pineapples. So also creating like the monocultural agricultural system that is making Hawaii dependent on US tourism and US exports of pineapples. So like it's the same thing. Like there's a lot of like parallels to how like even in Puerto Rico now, a lot of the farms there are sugar farms or like coffee farms. And it's like before the US took over, Puerto Rico was self-sufficient and had a diverse amount of like agriculture to feed itself, and just how changing to monocultural agriculture shifted the Puerto Rican diet for worse. Next we have Turista, a music video of a cleaner going inside the house to clean up after tourists who leave an Airbnb. And the house is a mess after a night of a lot of partying. Bad Bunny is portrayed as a cleaner, and Bad Bunny cleans up the house, sets up the house for another guest to enjoy. And the song is comparing the house to Puerto Rico, criticizing people that come into Puerto Rico, enjoy everything it has to offer, but never staying to help repair or like help the people of Puerto Rico. Because like, yeah, like people come there to enjoy their vacation, but then they never come in like when hurricanes come. They never come in to help like when the island is affected by natural disasters. He's also kind of making that metaphor to himself, because the whole song is kind of like about a lover who ends up leaving him, and he's like, oh, you were just a tourist in my life, you just came to kind of like use me and then leave like once you had your fun, and now I have to stay here and pick up the pieces. The last video that I wanted to talk about that I think is like a symbol of resistance, and like it has very clear symbols of resistance. We have the Mudanza music video, and this music video kind of shows me like the resistance is alive in Puerto Rico. This whole music video is about like his family, how his parents met, and just like how extensive like his family history is in Puerto Rico. And he's like, in the song himself, he says, a mí me importa un bicho lo que a ti te vale verga. Aquí mataron gente por sacar la bandera. Por eso es que ahora yo la llevo donde quiera, cabrón que fue. So this is referencing back to when I was talking about the Ley de Mordaza, where like flying the Puerto Rican flag was not legal. So he's kind of explaining in his own song like, yes, I'm going to fly the Puerto Rican flag. Whether you like it or not, I'm going to fly it because my ancestors, they were killed for flying the flag. Like, I'm going to fly it proudly. So yeah, like, I don't know, like that statement in of itself and like him flying the flag is like an act of resistance, and he's trying to explain that to his listeners. And then he ends the song with the mantra of like, de aquí nadie me saca, de aquí ya no me muevo, dile que esa es mi casa donde nació mi abuelo, yo soy de P fucking R. This is also an act of resistance because he's clearly stating to all the colonizers, you're not taking me out of my island. I am not going to move from my island. This is my home, and this is where my grandfather was born. Like, you're not going to... And, like, that in of itself is resistance, because he's like, I'm going to stand my ground. Like, he's challenging people and like motivating Puerto Ricans to stand your ground, keep your land in Puerto Rico, and like stay here to prevent people from taking over. And he just shows like a lot of pride in his culture. Even in the music video, you have pictures of like active resistance that go back to like when Puerto Ricans were fighting US military rule. And you also have traditional jibaro dresses, which is like traditional Puerto Rican dresses. He's showing like traditional salsa, like just like salsa sounds like everywhere. And also there's like a part where he brings in like Afro Latinos playing like African drums and wearing I think it's like African inspired like mask, to kind of show like how diverse the Puerto Rican culture is, and like showing the African roots and the Taino roots everywhere. I don't know. I really enjoyed the whole album. I really think that, in conclusion, even though I'm not Puerto Rican, it always makes me proud to see musical artists take a stand with their music. Just because, and like just things that they care about, especially like Bad Bunny after the whole like dating Kendall Jenner, because I know there was like a lot of controversy around that. And I think also like in going through this deep dive, I've realized like Bad Bunny as an artist has been standing up for his Puerto Rican people since like 2020. Like, this is not anything new. He's not doing it for clout. Him writing the whole album about his love for Puerto Rico and like his people shouldn't have come as a surprise, even though like for me, like I definitely hadn't been paying close attention. So like for me, I was like, wow, like this is amazing. I think I definitely, for my channel, I definitely want to talk about other Latino and POC artists who take stances with their music, especially with all the violence like happening in Gaza, all of the ICE raids that are currently going on, and now like the rise of like fascist regimes everywhere, like around the world. Stay safe. Thank you for listening, thank you for subscribing, and if you have a good day. I'm gonna keep posting hopefully soon now that I have more time. Okay, bye.